Hello and welcome to Title Sports Network with myself, Seb Parkinson, and Dan Rafael. Dan, just quickly, is it Rafael or Rafael?
It's Rafael, but I cut you Brits some slack because you don't know how to pronounce anything.
Well, I try and say Rafael, but I hear so many people say Rafael, and I'm thinking at some point I will ask you.
I have spent my entire life with people pronouncing my name incorrectly that when they even get close, I don't give it a second thought.
Right, well, we're here. It's Friday. It's Joyce versus Chisora. It's a fight that nobody really asked for, but we're all a little bit excited about. We think it's going to be a good tear up, a good dust up. My thoughts before I ask your opinion is that I think Chisora's probably going to go in there swinging and hope to get the job done pretty soon. And I think that Joyce is just going to be, Joyce is Joyce. He'll just take a hit and then absorb it and then just fight back and probably win the fight in maybe the 10th or 12th round. That's just my initial thoughts on it, Dan. What are your thoughts on this fight?
When this fight was first made, I sort of scratched my head. I was like, haven't they already fought before? Because Derek has fought everybody. And I know there was conversation about this fight at one time or another. It just didn't happen. For whatever the reason was, but I guess now they're doing it. They're both obviously near the end. It seems Joyce still trying to get back in contention. Derek is 40 years old. You have a long career behind him with a lot of tough fights against a lot of big names. Joyce doesn't have that many fights. He's only got less than 20 fights. He's 38 years old, but he stayed amateur for a really long time. But he's taken some hits also in his career. When Tyson Fury defeated Chisora, that wasn't a huge surprise. He never really kind of warranted that third fight against him anyway. He did bounce back from that. But the thing that Joyce happened to him was those losses to Zhilei Zhang that were, upsets, knockouts that really derailed him in a big way. He did bounce back in the fight that took place earlier this year against Cash Ali. He did get the last second knockout. Not a particularly good performance in my opinion. So, Joyce is looking to try to show that he's still got something, that he can maybe make a move and get back involved in bigger fights. With the amount of heavyweight action that the Saudis are involved with the bigger names, you got to figure if he's successful, he's going to put himself in a position to get one of those types of fights. And for Chisora, look, he's not, going to be going on for a much longer period of time. He's probably getting a nice paycheck, still has that desire to get in there and fight. But every fight that Derek fights could be his last fight. Joyce should be the big favorite in this fight. He is younger. He is bigger. He doesn't have nearly as much wear and tear as Derek Chisora does. You know what? So I don't know what the result is going to be. I suspect that Joyce is going to win. But as you said in the beginning of your comments, I think it's not a fight anybody was really asking for. But when it was presented to them and said, okay, Joyce and Chisora are going to fight, you're like, all right, cool. They're going to, deliver a tear up, as you say. So I'm looking for like a nice little slobber knocker. I'll check it out.
Yeah, well, this will be Derek Chisora's 10th appearance at the O2 Arena, potentially, as we said, his last. We think I think anyway, that the winner of this could be on maybe the Tyson Fury card in December, or do you think that'd be too soon for one of these guys to come out again?
No, I don't think that's too soon. I don't think that's too soon at all. I mean, if you're fighting in the end of July, to fight in a fight that's going to be in the later part of the year, not at all. I mean, obviously, it's going to depend on what kind of fight it is, how much damage is taken, what kind of punishment there is involved. But if Joe Joyce, as the favorite, wins the fight, and it's not any kind of terribly physically grinding, damaging, or injuries, that type of thing, then I've seen no reason why, if that's what they want to do, to put Joyce in another significant fight on that card. Because one thing you can expect is that when Turki Al-Sheikh and the Saudis do the big events, they don't just give you a main event. They put on a number of interesting fights on the undercard, and you got to figure, if you're going to be doing the heavyweight rematch between Usyk and Fury, that there's going to be other heavyweights on that show. And it seems to me that Joyce would certainly, with a victory, would be a candidate to participate, as would others, maybe Zhang, maybe Joe Parker, maybe one of the guys that wins August 3rd, either Bacol or Jared Anderson, guys like that. So, I think we're going to see another card with some good heavyweights on there, and Joe certainly would fit the bill. And listen, if Chisora wins and he wants to continue to fight, he always brings the entertainment. So I can see that happening also.
Yeah, Chisora sort of could become a bit of a gatekeeper for the sort of top 15 heavyweights if he does carry. What is he? 41 years of age now. A lot of fans want Chisora to retire because we all love him. we all love Derek Chisora and we sort of don't want to see him getting knocked out. But I remember watching him in one of the fights. I think it was at the Manchester Arena, and I think it was Joe Parker. He lost it on a unanimous decision, but Joe Parker looked like he was obviously going to win, but Chisora just kept coming. He kept just coming and coming and coming. And he looked out on his feet for so much of that fight. And that's the sort of thing that a lot of fans love about Chisora, is that no matter how much he looks beat, he just keeps going. And that's the sort of underdog story that a lot of us love. And that's why I love watching him. And I really hope that we're going to get that sort of Derek Chisora on Saturday night. What do you think?
Well, he's got 13 losses, but only been stopped 4 times. And you mentioned the fight with Parker. He actually fought Joe. If you remember, he fought him twice back to back. Those are the only 2 fights that Derek had in 2021. He lost a split decision in the first fight. He lost a unanimous in the second fight, but again, it was competitive. And in the first fight, he almost had Parker out of there in the first round. He scored a knockdown, and you're like, wow, he's gonna pull the big upset here. It obviously didn't happen, but it led to the rematch. And again, Chisora got knocked down in that fight. I think he got knocked down 3 times in the rematch. But the thing about Derek Chisora, he's bulletproof to the losses in terms of what the fans think, because they just know if they're seeing Derek Chisora in the ring, yeah, he may lose, but it's going to be an exciting fight on the way to the loss. And he's still capable of pulling the upset here and there, which he almost did against Joseph Parker, which would have been a huge upset. And even in his last fight, he wasn't fighting a particularly great fight or anything like that. But Gerald Washington, who was an American fighter that had fought for a world title, had fought against Deontay Wilder, for example, was in great condition, great athlete, was a former college football player, American football, not soccer. And that went the route, not a particularly great fight, but, Derek rightfully got the victory, and it kept his career going, and now he's got this opportunity against Joe Joyce. So, yeah, I understand why a lot of people want him to retire. Like you said, he's not getting any younger. He's actually 40 years old at this point. But, in boxing age, he's much older because he's taken so much punishment, had so much damage. But look, I listened to the press conference. I watched the press conference. He sounds good. He looks fit. He still has he's not just mailing it in. Sometimes when guys at that level of their career, they get near the end, they've got a good reputation and they're fan favorites and they can still make a few dollars. The desire isn't necessarily there. They're maybe not in the best condition. They're not taking it so seriously. I can't tell you what's going on in Derek Chisora's training camp, but you can tell just by looking at the man, he looks like he's in good shape and still has, as I like to call it, the zest for combat. He's not looking to just, I don't think anyway, mail it in. I guess we'll see what happens on Saturday. But one thing about Chisora, it seems to me, is that whenever he's fighting, at least he's giving the fans an honest effort. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, I just want to quickly run down some of the fights on the card. So you've got Moses Atuama, who's fighting Marius Wack. Marius Wack, obviously a very seasoned heavyweight. That's actually could be a really good test for Moses, who's obviously a young prospect heavyweight, 9-0. Marius Wack, 38 wins, 10 defeats. I expect Moses Atuama to win that fight. He looks like a really exciting young prospect. How do you see that one going?
I see that as an absolute annihilation. Marius Wack is probably 100 years past his best. He did challenge for a title against Klitschko years ago, but this is not this. It's the right kind of fight for Moses at this stage of his career because he is, like you said, a young fighter on the rise. A lot of people have him tabbed for stardom down the road. He has looked good in his fights. I just think he puts a beating on Wack way, 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 way faster than Wack. And Wack has just been playing out the string for quite a while now.
Yeah, they're fighting for the WBO Intercontinental Heavyweight title. Up the card, then Raven Chapman versus Johanna Sarabia for the WBC International Featherweight title. Raven Chapman's a boxer that's sort of gone under the radar a little bit. I think she's a really good fighter. Really excited for that one. Ryan Garner versus Archie Sharp for the WBC International Super Featherweight.
You love all these fringe titles that don't mean shit.
Sorry.
Who gives a fuck?
I'm sorry. Ryan Garner versus Archie Sharp then, Dan. Ryan Garner 15-0, Archie Sharp 25-0.
That's a good matchup. You know what? And those two guys, they don't need that. Look, I get the fact that they fight for these regional belts because it helps them in terms of where the organizations place them in the ratings. But there's not one boxing fan out there who's either going to watch this fight, ESPN Plus in the United States, I guess TNT Sports in the UK, Nobody is not going to watch this fight or buy a ticket for this fight, frankly, if they're not fighting for the WBC International 130-pound title. But what they do want to see is two guys who are undefeated, who both seem like they've got good futures, who are on the rise still. See who can take the step forward. To me, that's what it's about. It's not about some shit title.
All right, chief support then. I'm not going to say what the title is on the line then. Dennis McCann versus Ionu Baluta. Again, interested in that one? Super bantamweight fight?
I mean, I guess it's a bigger deal over there now, but that's the fight where you should say the title, because they're fighting for the European title, which is not a world title, but it's still a traditional, significant, important title that gets guys into world contention. And a lot of great fighters in years past have become a European champion. But in terms of my interest, look, Baluta is a guy that's like, he's fought a lot of top opponents. He always gives an effort. And so, yeah, he's the underdog, and McCann is the guy that's the undefeated fighter, the younger guy. And the idea here is, can Baluta give him a test? Can we see where Dennis McCann is in his career? Because one thing we know about Baluta is he's going to be he's going to give a great effort. It's similarly that we discussed with Chisora. He may not have that kind of name, that level of name recognition, and hasn't had the kind of magnitude of events. But Baluta is not a guy that's a joke. And by the way, this is a rematch, because when they fought the first time, it was a technical draw. And so there was some unfinished business there. It ended, but it was in the 9th round. So we'd already seen several rounds take place, and it was obviously a competitive fight. So we'll see if that's the one blemish on McCann's record, which he's 15-0, but that one draw, that took place earlier. What was that, last summer? It was like about a year ago, August of last year, I believe. Anyway, it's a solid match. I mean, I don't think it does a whole lot for those of us here in the United States who don't really know either guy. But I'm a bit of a junkie, obviously, so I'm going to check it out.
Excellent stuff, Dan. Right, well, from talking about titles that don't matter to titles that do matter, next week is the big one. It's the Riyadh card in LA, Dan. Where are you going to be for that, and what can we expect?
Well, I'm going to be in Los Angeles covering the fight. I'll look forward to being there at the BMO Stadium in Los Angeles. With the fact that there hasn't really been too many big, huge fights in Los Angeles in the last few years, the pandemic, leaving ESPN, and lots of other things that have taken place in my life, I actually haven't been to Los Angeles since 2019. The last time I was out there was when Sean Porter fought Errol Spence. I've been to many, many fights since then, but mostly have been in places like Las Vegas. I've been like Texas, New York, places like that. So I'm looking forward to going back to LA. It's a tremendous card. Terence Crawford, as we were talking about before, one of the best fighters, if not the very best pound for pound in the world, moving up in weight to challenge Madrimov, who is not the most known guy in the world, Seb, but he's got a good reputation. He looked really good when he won the title, was a tremendous amateur, undefeated, really in a great, great condition, good puncher. A lot of things going for him. Obviously, he's going to be the underdog, but I think it's a reasonable fight for Crawford as he looks to win a belt in another weight class. It's a tremendous opportunity, for Madrimov. I mean, remember, before he fought for the title on one of the Riyadh cards, a Riyadh season card in Saudi Arabia, he had never fought, at that level of a fight. And when he fought Kurbanov and won the belt, he looked really good. And that was a fight that was almost in jeopardy in the days leading up to it, because there had been an error made with one of his medical reports. The fight was canceled. Maybe it's back on. So he went through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of drama. He won the fight. And now here he goes, first defense. He's not taking a soft touch. He's not going for a showcase homecoming fight. He's not taking on a mandatory. He's going in with the best fighter in the world, arguably. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good fight. I don't know, if I give him, I think Crawford is certainly the favorite for sure, but I don't think it's like he's not going in there and knocking Madrimov out in like 1 or 2 rounds, in my opinion. And then you look at the remainder of the card, you got plenty of other good, interesting fights on there. You got the return of Pitbull Cruz against Valenzuela, good matchup. That's the co-feature. You got the former heavyweight champ Andy Ruiz is back in business. He's on that card taking on Big Baby Miller. You're gonna have David Morella's on the card. You've got just a lot of stuff going on. There's, they really like what the Riyadh Seasons folks have done. They're loading up the show, and it's going to be definitely worth the time and the money in my mind.
Right, well, brilliant, Dan. Thanks for that. We'll leave that there for now. Dan is going to be in LA, as he said, and hopefully will be a show with Dan and Aaliyah Orozco, our reporter who's going to be out there covering the fight. And Michelle will be there the back end of the week after she's celebrated her birthday. She's turning 21 again, Dan. So we wish Michelle all the best. Michelle, if you're watching, happy birthday if it has been your birthday. And yeah, we'll leave it there. Dan and I will be back in 2 weeks. not next week because Danny's in LA, as he said. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the show, and we will see you all in LA next week.